Hi, I'm Annika Johnson from Al Johnson's in Sister Bay. I hope you enjoy my new video series called Door County Girl. These are stories of my life, the people and places that I love, and of course how we all survive here in northern Wisconsin. You can come back as often as you like, but don't forget to subscribe to Al's YouTube channel. I'll be posting lots of really cool new videos. So let's go. Welcome to another episode of Door County Girl, and today I'm here at the Corner of the Past Museum, right behind me, and the Sister Bay Historical Society is doing a series of stories, and my brother Rolf tonight will be speaking, and he'll tell you a little bit about Al Johnson's Swedish restaurant and the history. So let's go check it out. Come on.
Okay, so my mom, this is going to be around 1960, because when she showed up, she added a little change to the decor of the restaurant. And my dad's big fear was she was going to make it too classy for his clientele at that time. He was worried about air conditioning, he was worried about carpeting, he was worried about all those things, but obviously my mom knew better. We've had those chairs since then. I still have them in storage. If you've been in the restaurant any time lately, you'll see we've got a change in chairs, and a lot of people miss the old orange salmon colored fiberglass knockoff Arthur Eames chairs, but relax, I have them. They just need a lot of TLC. The blue glasses are the same glasses. You walk in there every day and you say, gosh, these things never change. There's a crazy story about the blue glasses. The company that made them was Viking Glass. They went out of business, and they were made at one time, I believe, in Scandinavia, but they were also made in Virginia. There was a large row of glass companies there, and they shared the same mold. So they had these goblets. You'll see them in Italian restaurants. They're usually red or green. You'll see them in supper clubs. They're usually honey colored or yellow. And we always had blue. And we couldn't get them anymore. So I called this company in Ganilla, is it Iowa or Ohio? Ohio, Moser Glass. And I asked them if they could get the mold, would they make the glass? And there was a brother and sister team. They said, you get the mold, we'll make the glass. So I called down in Virginia, I got the mold, sent it to them, and now we still have those glasses. Another shot of the restaurant, that's that counter I was talking about, still in use today, and the refrigerator behind it. Now there's a steel post right there. That also holds up the majority of the ceiling. And upstairs was living quarters. And I was visiting Polly one day, Charneski, and his wife used to waitress tables there. And she told me, my dad used to say, up at the crack of dawn, first one to work, washed all the dishes, did all the cooking, waited all the tables, and she said, She said he'd come in, turn everything on, he'd go back upstairs and go to bed, and he'd say, hammer on the pole if anybody comes in. So she'd go over there with a wooden spoon and whack on the pole, and he'd hear the echo upstairs, and then he'd come down and make the meals. And then when he's done, he'd go back upstairs, and she said, you know the drill. All right, Sister Bay Hotel, upper left-hand corner, you know that is the Sister Bay Bowl today. If you take a look at the caption there, and you look closely at the two older cars, the closest one in the left corner is the 1956 T-Bird. It was peacock blue. That was my dad's car, first new thing he ever bought when he had some success in the restaurant. And he's in there playing hearts, because he'd stop in the bowl in the afternoon, they'd sit at the bar and they'd play a little card game called Hearts or Schmear or Sheep's Head. My mother drove by one day and she sees this truck parked in the exact same spot. But now it's 45 years later. So she tells Mitchell, Larson to go get a photo and take it, and then we're going to post it in the picture. And some things never change, so he's parked in the same spot, afternoon, 45 years later, and he's in there playing hearts. There, he's got a picture, as it says, Belgian powered. So he used to have a bet with the owner of the Sister Bay Bowl, Earl Willems. And it might be a Chicago Bear-Packer game bet, whatever it might be. Might be who's coming in the door next time, who's going to push who up the hill in Sister Bay on Fall Fest. The parade used to go up the hill. And if you notice, my father is sitting in the wheelbarrow, and Earl Willems is pushing him up the hill, and that's right there on the Sister Bay Bowl corner is right there. So obviously, I'm going to guess my dad won the bet. Now, not to mess with tradition, there's my brother, and there's Belgie Willems. So that's owner of the Sister Bay Bowl, and he made a bet with my brother, and he ends up, this is on Goat Fest though, and they're coming down the hill because they were too tired to go up the hill. All right, so there's my dad sitting on top of the restaurant that would be the gift shop roof part. And crazy story about the logs. The logs were at a standstill when they were trying to build this restaurant because of a trucker strike back around 1972, 74, and he couldn't get the logs. So they were sitting on a dock in New York. And my dad was on the phone screaming about how he can't get these logs. So there's a gentleman sitting at the counter, dark suit on, fedora, reading the paper, read the New York Times. And back then you could smoke, he had a pipe, and he'd sit there, and then he was curious why my dad was so upset, so he asked him what's going on, and he told him. And he says, maybe I can help. And he didn't say anything more than that. My dad probably didn't even bother to listen to him. 2 days later, my dad gets a phone call, the logs are on the way, and he sees the gentleman, he walks up to him and says, thank you. I don't know who he was, and my dad is absolutely convinced he had some pull with the unions down there, and he got the logs delivered, and they were en route in no time at all, and back in Sister Bay, and we were back on schedule. So here is the crew from, I believe it's the Meisner group, and some Norwegian carpenters putting on the dirt for the roof. And this would be the side now that faces south. The closest door goes into the kitchen there. And this would be face the beer garden today at Al Johnson's. And when they put the sod up, there was a gentleman in one of these talks I gave who was working that day. He was an older fellow. And they got it, I said, from Twin Creeks sod out of, it's not far from Manitowoc. But anyhow, my dad was told after they put the dirt up and the sod up, don't water. Well, my dad, he can't help but water, so the first night he starts watering it, and all the sod starts sliding down the roof. We had every cook, every dishwasher, some wait staff, everybody up there trying to push the sod back up. And over the years, at the edge of the side was always this little lump. And I asked my dad what that was from, and he said that's the reason that happened there. And the gentleman that was in the talk when I was giving back in February, he remembers it like it was yesterday. He said he remembers telling him, don't water, but he went ahead and did it anyway. So this is facing south, right outside the restaurant. As you see that at that time we had cedar bushes there. Right next door is Chris' Red Owl Grocery Store, a little history in Sister Bay there, which is now our property where we have the Scandinavian beer garden known as Stabor. One interesting fact is we've never, ever once closed down when they were building this restaurant around the old restaurant. So they're putting the shell up, and as they put the shell up and the windows went in, they started dismantling the old restaurant. And it was a boom for business. People would come in there and be entertained by, even though it was construction, they thought it was unusual. And there was no rhyme or, the only rhyme or reason we did it that way is he was flat broke. He pretty much overextended himself to build this place. He couldn't afford to close down and lose the business for one day. This is, there's the goat on the roof. That's more than likely going to be Oscar. This is the back corner. I try to point out things in the photographs that I see that jars my memory. On the bottom left, there's a wooden barrel there that my mother would use for garbage cans because she thought they looked more elegant than a steel barrel out there. And that barrel was originally sent from Norway, and they were full of herring. So we would get herring fillets in those. And they were 55 gallons. They weighed about 225 pounds, and they were completely sealed. You'd break them open, and we'd run them down to my parents' house on the water, and we'd open them up and we'd pour them in fish tubs, and then we'd put a garden hose in there. And the idea was to soak the extra salt out of it so we could pickle it later on. Well, we'd always have these barrels lined up down there. Of course, we were the hot spot for every dog in the neighborhood that was bobbing for herring, and the seagulls would show up. My brother and my sister and I would take the barrels after we were done and fill them with stones. And then we would throw them into the L shape of the dock, and we'd let them soak there all summer long. And the idea was get the smell out, and then we'd bring them back up, and then we'd use them as garbage cans. I always noticed, though, even underwater, Lars, do you remember that? You'd bring them up, they still stunk. Even underwater, you could smell them. Yeah, they were something. But, I'd love to have those barrels today. They're probably worth something, but back then they were just throwaways. I love the old photographs with the old cars, because I think the old cars had character back then. You could tell each one when they were coming down the street what they were. Across the street from this roof view is Wilkie's Furniture. It's funny thing about all the buildings on the water, nobody took advantage of the water. Everything faced the street. We purchased the Wilkie building back in the 80s, and we ran it as a gift shop. And eventually we tore it down, but everything in the back was the warehouse, and nobody really cared to face the water. Of course, now water property is a premium. Here's one of the goats on the northwest corner, and if you look at some of those girls there, some of you guys might remember who they are. If I look at them, I can see it looks like Katie Burris. It looks like Casca. I can't see really the rest in there. Christy Shampoo's in there. Oh yeah, Diane's in there too. Diane was my boss for many years when I was a dishwasher. Of course, now Diane eventually bought Wilson's. This is a great shot, not photoshopped or anything. Kit was up on the roof one day, and as he was walking off the roof, he did a turn around and he said, "Wow," he said, "they're all standing in a line looking at him." And I'm going to guess it must be in the early spring, because it looks like the trees are just starting to get leaves. The marina's not full, a little overcast, but what a great shot. It looks like that they were enjoying themselves. 1960-61, Al's Swedish invasion, before the Beatles. Something happened in Sister Bay, and I was not born then, but even through the 60s and early 70s, I was too young and naive to understand what was going on. But every year in the spring, all these gentlemen would show up at my parents' house. And the reason is because we were importing girls from Sweden to work in the restaurant. Now, this is before I was born, but I do recognize my aunt, my mom's sister, in the bottom right-hand corner. Actually, this is probably right when this is about 64 or 65. Now I'm just, again, jarring my memory because I see Anita Conlon in there. And she always sends me a birthday card, and she remembers my birthday because it was the year she first came to America. So this would have been about 64 or 65.
And Gunnel Lawrence.
And one of those girls are in there from Norway, I forget.
Gunnel Lawrence in Ellison Bay.
Oh, she is, that's right. So how many of these girls stuck around here? Do you know, Mom?
No, only Anita and Gunnel.
And then, of course, Lillemore moved to California and lived there for a while before she went back to Sweden. So there was a gentleman that was building a dock next door to us, and he told me the story one time. The girls would come from Sweden and hang out there. Of course, it wasn't uncommon to sunbathe topless for the girls over in Europe. So when they came here, they thought nothing of it until somebody made a mention it to them, and then they were always quite embarrassed. But this gentleman that was building a dock told me the story. He had a guy that was carrying a wheelbarrow full of concrete, and he was staring this way and walking to the end of the dock, and over he went. And he told me this, and he was 72 years old, and he said he did it when he was in his early 40s, and he said to this day they don't let him down. They always, all his buddies give him a hard time about it. Let's see. All right, there's David Dobner, and, well, there's Gunilla. And who else? Lisa Lot. So Davo, our manager back then, he came out of CIA Culinary Institute of America School. He went to Vietnam. He was an officer chef there. Very good manager for us at Al Johnson's. I learned a lot from him. Loved the guy. That's looking back at our dishwashing section. Nothing's changed a whole lot in our kitchen. Every time I look at an old picture, I can tell exactly where they are in the photograph. This is schedule day. My dad would come in with a list of notes. People have made their requests, and he'd go and post a schedule, and you couldn't wait to see what your schedule was and how close he didn't come to your request. But once it was posted, it was posted. You never said another word. You'd work it out yourself. So here is part of the Swedish invasion as well. I don't know if I have the photograph or not, but these girls came for the reunion we had at Al's, and believe it or not, they all still fit into their dirndls, and they took a photo by the sign. You'll have to go online to our Facebook page and check it out, and they got the exact same stance in the photo and the sign. This one here, though, is actually outside of the original boutique. So next door to Al's, there was a small house. It became his office eventually, and two ladies lived there, Mom. I don't remember their names. Florence and Edith. And my dad approached them one day and said that, I'd like to buy your house, but you live there as long as you care to live there. And they made a deal. They lived there for quite a few years. I remember because I used to have this route when I'd walk home from Sister Bay School, every house I'd stop at to get candy, and they were one of them. And eventually we purchased, or we took it over, and it became our first boutique. So we sold a lot of wooden shoes out of that little store. That was our first gift shop, Al Johnson Swedish Boutique, B-U-T-I-K, which everybody still says, Butik. Al Johnson famous quote, you really want to own a restaurant, get ready to wash some dishes, because that is the truth. You don't care how high in the totem pole you are, one day you're going to be there and you're going to have somebody sick, somebody not show up, somebody quit, and you'll be washing dishes. But that is the foundation of the restaurant business. He would always say that. Toughest job, best job, and is the most important job. This is Al actually outside of Johnny's Cottage Restaurant. He's standing there with the sleeveless shirt, showing off some pipes, having a cigarette. Looks like Johnny might be sitting down, and the guy against the wall, it looks like, I'm going to guess he's on his cell phone. Maybe not. Perry Shampoo and my brother hard at work washing dishes. You can see they're swamped. My dad never had a dirty dish on the dirty side. But Ken and Bunda used to say, Al, you just get them wet, I get them clean. There is a guy whose hair went south on him eventually, standing before you today. If that guy walked in the restaurant today, I would not hire him. And that's me. That's me. And I'm washing dishes. Now there's my dad. Now look how clean his side is, but look how messy he is. We'd always say, Al, do you want an apron? He'd say, I don't need a damn apron. And after about an hour of washing dishes, he'd get up and go home and watch Perry Mason and come back with a change of clothes because he'd be soaked from head to toe. But he loved the job. He always said that if I won the lottery, I'd wash dishes somewhere. Because he said when you were washing dishes, nobody bothered you. Well, actually, this is a little video of Nor Bly when my dad was in his failing health. So this would have been about 2010, and Norb was always trying to get my dad to say a few words. But you know, it's like anybody up here. They don't think that what they have to say is that important. It's the people like ourselves that listen to the stories that want to repeat them, and we want to hear them again and again. But let's see what he has to say.
I never was sold on a dishwashing machine, because I washed all the dishes by hand years ago. Always by hand.
The best job in the restaurant.
It's the absolute best job because nobody bothers you. You're there by yourself, and nobody bothers you.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. All right, so here on your left side, watching the screen, is the goat and his baby. That was lingonberry, and before, some of the goats, we didn't always have a place to keep them. So a couple of the goats we'd keep behind the restaurant, some by the pond just tied up until there was their job to go on the roof. Now, Lingonberry was pregnant, and I don't think any of us knew it. Do you remember? I just think one day we went home after work, and we came back, and there were 2 goats where there was once one. So we acquired her somehow from somebody pregnant, and that became Little Lingonberry. There's my mother in all her elegance in front of the coffee machine, probably working hard. This is when the parade used to go up the hill. So they're going up, says, Al, what do you do with the goats in the winter? When I say parade, I mean fall festival. If you're looking down the street, on the left-hand side, you see a Standard Oil sign. That was Hendrickson's, which is now Hendrickson's Park. So this is my lovely sister modeling wooden shoes. Again, this is outside the very first boutique. Between the restaurant and the boutique, there was a green space there, and she's sitting on looks like a picnic table there. We used to have a bunch of ads like this in the door reminder. And my dad used to tell a story. My mother is always ahead on fashion. And when hot pants came into fashion, we were one of the first place, if not the only place, to sell them. And they couldn't be sold. And then one day a gal comes in, I'm not going to say her name, local girl, she puts on a pair and she goes out to the Blue Ox and plays pool all night. The next day we sold out of hot pants.
We also sold the first bikini.
Oh, we did sell the very first bikini, that's correct.
Bikini at the E from B.
Yep. Everybody got a bikini after that.
These stories are wonderful, so if you have a chance to come and see some of these Sister Bay stories, you should come and check it out. Rolf is a ham bone, as usual, and told a really good series of stories, and I think everyone enjoyed it. So thanks for joining us for another episode of Door County Girl, and don't forget to like and subscribe at the bottom of the page, and we'll give you all kinds of other things you can check out in Door County and all around where I live. Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching Door County Girl. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next time.